Testing 1, 2. This is Mr. Nobody. This is my first podcast. Where do I begin? I'm going to tell my story, and I'm going to do it without referring to facts or figures or science. All things that I have a lot of respect for. But somehow this it doesn't want proof. It doesn't make me feel differently to know that there's science or studies. This is the story of grief, maybe of shame, and it's my commitment to not leave it bottled up inside me. In some ways, it's a memorial, the only one I could consider doing. You see, I named myself, or should I say renamed myself, Mr. Nobody, after my son, after my son died. It just felt right. But I won't go there just yet. We all have identities. We all have faces that are unique and one of a kind. We all have lives and histories that are just yours, just mine. For the last, I guess, 2.5 years, I have been wallowing, I suppose, seething and raging in my emotions. A lot of that has been self-pity, like feeling sorry for myself. A massive amount of anger. A massive amount of anger. A massive amount of anger. Which I'll get into. Like a lot of people, maybe I never thought I would do anything like this, even though my background is in entertainment, insofar as I am a guitarist. I've been an actor. I don't call myself one anymore. But I've had a lot of time on stage in front of audiences. An actor is somebody who pretends to be somebody that they're not. I guess in that way, I'm still an actor, which is cool, because that's what we all do. We show ourselves to be identities that we hope we are, wish we were, and in some cases actually are. Like a lot of people who have had some tragedy in their life. I was reborn when I got a phone call one night right around midnight, 2 minutes to midnight. And you know when the phone rings at 2 minutes to midnight, it's never a good thing. You're not getting a call that you won the lottery or got a job or a gig or I don't know, some good news. The police in a town where I did live were calling my tenant who was living in the house that I raised my 2 children in. That's what he told me on the phone. He didn't know anything, but the police were trying to call him, looking for me. And I called the local police, and they gave me the number of another police station in Georgia, where my son moved and was going to school. My beautiful wife went down to her mother's apartment, which was on the ground floor, and which was kind of late to do that. It wasn't just wasn't typical at that hour that she would go down there. So I was alone in our apartment, and there was a homicide detective on the telephone. But you know, I am getting ahead of myself. Let me backtrack. 24 hours. It was a Thursday. I remember I took off from my regular job, which is I'm an art director for composers. It's probably the best way to say it. I tell composers I want more of this and less of that, help them focus, what have you. It's a good job that I got from a previous guitar student who owned the company. A friend of mine who is an extraordinary cabinet maker asked me if I could help paint an apartment. I live in a city. It really doesn't matter what city. But it's not so easy to find people that you can really trust to get the job done right. Paint an apartment. And he said, I'll pay you really well. And as much as I like my job, I sometimes crave the feeling of just working, putting in my headphones and just kicking ass on some job that requires a lot of physical energy. So the combination of helping my friend who needed it and knowing that he would pay me well, I took the job. So I took the day off of work to go work. I don't want to give you the wrong impression that I'm, like an early riser and one of those guys that is just really super dependable and a hard worker. Even though I probably am dependable, I am not an early riser. So I got to the job around 11 and made a game plan. And then executed it, like one room at a time. I would do this part of it, and move to the hallway, and move to the kitchen, and move to the bedroom. And it was absolutely a marathon. I think I worked like 14 hours because I didn't get out of there till about 1 in the morning. But I got it done. And the good thing about the city is that there are these terrific 24-hour stores, and there was one on the corner. And I got myself some food, and I got a beer. And to this day, I still see that beer in all of the stores, and I can't drink it. I went home and put my food in front of the television with my lovely wife, who's also one of my music collaborators and not the mother of my son. And I didn't know it at the time, but my son was injecting himself with whatever fentanyl heroin mix he picked up. Right around that time, and the weirdest thing happened. I went into the bedroom, and for sure I was tired from just the physical job. I should also say that I got paid $500, which was fucking great. I thought of all the different things I would do with $500 that I made in one day, honestly made in one day. I have made more than that dishonestly in my past, and I'll get into that. Anyway, I went down the hall. We live in this little apartment. And I laid down on my back on my wife's side of the bed, which I never do. And I just laid backwards, and I fell into the darkest, dreamless, but terrifying sleep. And it lasted, I don't know, an hour? And this was pretty late at night. This was, 2:30, 3 in the morning. And that's the exact time that my son was dying. However you die from that shit, like your heart stops and you forget to breathe. He was laying in his bed with his headphones on, listening to something on his iPod. He had just finished playing softball with his roommates a couple hours earlier, took a shower, went into his room, and evidently shot this bullshit up. And so I was laying on my bed while he was dying. And you know how people say, like, they knew something was wrong? You hear mothers say that when something terrible has happened to one of their kids. I didn't know what it could be, because he had just left from a visit, and he went back to Georgia and started his last year of school that week. Even that day. And so we both kind of died, because I felt like I was dead. And there was a terrible feeling. A dark, awful feeling in me. I got in bed and I made it back to sleep. And the next day, I went to work, and I had been undertaking jazz guitar playing, and had up to that point committed myself to something like 3 years of hard shedding. They call shedding. They call shedding, and for some reason that day, a bass player with whom I work with, and I played through some tunes, shedding, they call shedding. And this is a guy that has some real chops and I respect a lot. Shedding, they call shedding. Like, he said to me, man, you're sounding really good. Smooth. Something like that. But it was like a compliment that you don't get unless you earn it. Shedding, they call shedding. Unless you earn it. I'd been like a freight train working on this stuff. Shedding, they call shedding. After this little jam session, I went to a ear doctor to get my ears checked because they had been humming and whistling and buzzing. And when the doctor got through with me, it was like a weight was lifted off my shoulders because the sound was like shedding. They call shedding. I thought I was losing my hearing or going crazy or both. Yeah. Shedding. They call shedding. It was like a dreamy day. It was a surreal day. And all that day, my son's body, his lifeless body, that he shut off, was laying in his bedroom. And his roommates were wondering why his car was in the driveway. Because that was unusual. And they knew he had school. And his door was closed. So I guess around 7 or 8 o'clock at night, they opened the door. Other parents who found their OD'd children, their dead children. And I am so grateful that I didn't have to do that. The horror of that. But I remember being really angry and just upset that his beautiful roommates, really nice people, not druggies, by which I mean not other people that were using junk that, wouldn't have given a shit or wouldn't have been a big surprise. They were surprised. Because my son did not seem like a candidate, at least at this time in his life, for this kind of outcome. I know one of his roommates told me she tried to give him CPR, but obviously when you're dead that long, you're dead. I was going through this dreamy day. I hadn't spoken to my son since the day before he killed himself.
I looked at the clouds today while driving. Heavenly pillars, cavernous plateaus. One was a fortress of heavens and shadows.
Yeah.
Red light flashing, I noticed a dark cloud hanging over my head, following me wherever I go, and leaving a shadow
Yeah.
too far to run. We live in a land of fallen angels, suspended.
Yeah, son.
I see the faces of those that left us. I'm jealous. And as I floated towards the clouds, thinking out loud, I know that I'm broken. I won't be allowed. I tried to resist, but nothing was worth it. Hands came to hold me, but all I could do was turn on them coldly, like nothing they said was enough.
Yeah, son.
It tore me, I couldn't stop it at all. I tore at the seams. I started to fall from that fortress I never noticed.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry I couldn't save you. And that you turn to something that just destroys everybody it touches. And everybody who welcomes it into their life. And he said, I'm sorry to inform you, but that your son is deceased.